On this. All right, great. I'm going to do a quick announce. I'm going to introduce our guest. When I was preparing to introduce our speaker, Robert Vente, I was trying to figure out when we met, and I think I met him in the late 90s. Robert was kind of the hotshot photographer around Marin County, and I remember admiring all his work, and he was doing a lot of landscapes here in Marin County, and you would see them all over in the form of greeting cards, and especially popular in the health food store here at Good Earth. And I can't remember any details about our first meeting, but we started doing photo shows together. And not the kind where you hang your work up on the walls, but we would set up multiple projectors and fade images into each other, back and forth into each other with music. And it was super clunky and awkward, but it was super fun teaming up with Robert and sharing our photos with the world. And one of the most impressive things about Robert is he's great at every type of photography. So most people I know specialize in a certain type, for example, landscape or portrait. But Robert does everything. And so I want to now hand the floor off to Robert.
Okay, thank you so much, Stephanie. All right, well, I want to start with thanking you all for being here. This is exciting. What we're going to do is I'm going to start with a short video, and I want to give a little warning. The video that has a soundtrack by Sammy Hagar, so it's a little hard rock and it has kind of edgy kind of images. So you might want to check your sound so that it isn't too loud for you. I'm going to start with that, and then I'll follow up with photojournalism, or street photography as it's called now. And we're going to go through a whole bunch of different black and white and some color photographs and give little comments on what happened during that shoot, which is the same thing I'm going to do with the Sammy Hagar shoot, because that was a fun shoot. And so I did a lot of book cover. I did a lot of book covers too, but I did a lot of covers for this magazine called Pacific Sun. So you're going to see some of those images already in the slideshow, in the video, and then I'm going to come back to them later and sort of explain what they were like. So there's the first chapter is photojournalism. The second chapter is scenics, or landscapes, and then I'm going to go into some architecture, which is what I do quite a bit of right now. So without further ado, we're going to go share screen, and we're going to go into the video. So see you soon. All right. And is that, let me see, we go back here. Does everybody see this?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, then here we go. Here goes the slideshow. Okay, that was that. Did everybody get that sound okay? Did that work? Oh, you're all muted, so you can't talk back to me. That's a little bit weird. Is there any way we could unmute, and then so we can kind of have a more of a conversation, or is it, I mean, if it's too much, we won't do it, but it's kind of fun that I'm not the only one talking all the
You
time.
can unmute yourself, everybody.
Is it working? Did you unmute?
That was great. Thank you.
That was great.
Okay, good, good,
Yep.
good.
I turned it all
Perfect.
the way up. It was
You
great.
turn it all the way up. That's a good
Yeah,
idea.
that's great.
Needs to be cut.
I like the pictures, but I turned it all the way down.
There's something for everybody here. All right. Anyway, we'll get to questions a bit later. So the whole presentation that right now, so if you're worried about timing, it shouldn't take more than an hour. It should be actually maybe a bit less than an hour. So going into photojournalism, here we go with the first image. This was an image when I was still at photography school, and I was really interested in photojournalism. And this was a school. This is in England, by the way, in the late 60s. And this was a shot I took at a co-educational boarding school, it was called. And it was akin to another school like that called Summer Hill. I don't know if you've heard of Summer Hill, but Summer Hill was a school that was, and this school as well, it was entirely run by the kids. So there was an overseeing by adults, but there was no control because they wanted to do this experiment of seeing if kids could run a school by themselves. They could make their own curriculum. They could, and they found that they had their own meetings. They had their own principal, or whatever you had their own principal was one of the kids, and they found that it worked extremely well. So that was a fun thing. I enjoyed it very much. And then here, I used to drive around England a lot, and this is when on Christmas Eve I ended up in Glasgow, and in Glasgow there is a part of the town's called the Gorbals, and it's a horrifying slum, or at least it used to be. I think it's gotten better now. And we were told not to photograph there because the city of Glasgow didn't like pictures being taken there, so that was the first place we went to, of course. Um, this was an assignment to photograph somebody smoking. So go out, do street photography, photograph people smoking. So I picked her. She's called a Clippy, and they were the bus conductors on the double deck buses.
Oh.
So yeah, this photograph has got me lots of jobs. When I would apply for photography teaching jobs, I'd show them that picture and I get the job. This was then I was hired by a company called Penguin Books, and they were doing a book on boundaries, and they asked me to do photograph kids setting their own boundaries. So that picture pretty much speaks for itself. And for the photography buffs out there, I was shooting Nikons, and I was shooting Tri-X, black and white film, a lot. Then I started getting into skateboarding, which I will get to in a minute. But the reason I'm mentioning that now is that this is in Brighton. And in Brighton, at that point, there was a lot of skateboarding going on. It had just come over from the United States. And this was a skinhead. And these were the very, very first skinheads. They were basically young boys. They were basically white nationalists. And they would basically go around the city bashing up. They call it Paki bashing, and that title sort of explains itself. Pakis and Indians, Pakistanis and Indians. Those were their targets. So that's them. This is in a town called Whitby, and I just enjoyed that image of just a simple black and white of the fishermen. This was there too, and again here, and this is something I want to talk about a little bit in terms of street photography. Is that I never ask permission. I just shoot, and I very often just stand right in front of people. And you shoot first and ask for forgiveness later. That's a quote that I actually like a lot. And here I just like the simplicity of them sitting there. Across the street from me was a funeral director, Mr. Aildin. This was his shop, and this was his hearse. It's a beautiful car. And this was his little workshop where they were making, economy caskets. This was in Boulder, and I was walking down the street, and I saw this man, and I kind of walked behind him because I really wanted to photograph him. And he went into this. He wasn't homeless, but he lived in one of these cheap hotels. So I walked up to him in the lobby. I said, would you allow me to take your photograph? He said, sure. So we went up to his room, and I took a whole bunch of shots, and this is the one that I picked. Then what happened in England was skateboarding. It was a new sport, and I had a friend who was in film school, and he was doing a film on skateboarding, and he asked me to take some shots. And skateboarding came over from the United States, of course. It came from Beverly Hills. There was a place called Dogtown, and there was a guy called Stacy Peralta, Tony Alva. They were the first skateboarders, and so that sport came over to England. And what they would do in Beverly Hills is they would find empty houses, and they would go and skate in their empty swimming pools, and that's where the skateboarding started, in the empty swimming pools. So then in England, what they started building these swimming pools. Here's one of them. It's a shot. And so I started doing these photographs, and then I took them over to Skateboard magazine, and they really liked them, and so they hired me as their. I was doing the covers for the magazine for them. And the interesting part about doing this kind of photography at that time was that cameras didn't have autofocus, and they had no you had to you couldn't just take 120 frames a second. You maybe like four was the most that you could do on a motor drive at that particular time. So you had to really tune into it. All happened really, really fast. You hear that guy come up, and then he whizzes by you. But if you can see him in the viewfinder, you've missed a shot. So you had to guess. You had to feel when he would make that flip. So, and here I used lots of different techniques of using fill and flash, and then have a longer exposure so that you get that blurry kind of movement. And there is one of the covers. Um, Okay, that was skateboarding. You can look at the wheels, and that's how people always know. Oh my God, those are ancient wheels. Here's the end cover of Sammy Hagar, and it was
Richardson
fun.
Bay.
He lives in Mill Valley, by the way, and he travels around. He does lots of tours still. But so I was asked by the magazine to photograph him, and so he owns a hotel called the Aqua. I think it's the Aqua Cafe Hotel in Mill Valley, and I hadn't met him yet, so I went to the bathroom and standing there taking a pee, and this guy walks in. He stands right next to me, peeing also. And he goes, "Hey," and I go, "Hey." I said, "You must be Sammy." He goes, "Yes, I am." I said, "Okay, I'm going to be photographing you." And so he says, "Okay, what do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, lately I've been into, like, going beyond the person's mask, like getting more to who the person really is, this kind of stuff." And he goes, "Oh yeah, that sounds great. Let's go do it." So then we went outside, and he stands in front of me, and he starts doing this and this and this. So, so it wasn't exactly what I pictured, but it would actually work perfect, because that's his thing. And I also found out by when you photograph like some kind of superstar, um, they go by their personas. They go by like Elton John. He says, "I could never get on stage unless I was in my act, because otherwise it would be way too stressful." So, and the same with David Bowie, they just dress up, and the same with Sammy. This was an interesting shoot. This is a man that he's a very famous person you've never heard of. His name is Walter Murch, and he's a film editor. I don't know if has anybody ever heard of Walter Murch here? No.
Oh yeah,
He
sure.
he got won three Oscars for editing Apocalypse Now, The Godfather, The English Patient, and he worked out of a studio in Berkeley, Zans, where they filmed Amadeus. And so I got this time to go meet him and take his cover photo. And so when I got to the studio, I walked in, and he wasn't there yet. But the people who were working there, they were like in awe of Walter Murch. He was like Elvis, he was there kind of like a god. So they had this vibration of like, Mr. Murch isn't here yet, but he just called. He just called and said, "You can go into his editing suite." So I did. I went up there and waited for him. And so then, when he came in, I was kind of in that same vibration as the other people. Like, oh my God, this is a famous person. How can I direct him, etc. So I started photographing him, and I noticed that I wasn't getting anything. They were all like snapshots. I wasn't what I normally would like to get into with a person. So I said, I have to stop shooting. And he said, why? I said, because do you know that the people in this building treat you like a god? And he goes, oh, no, no. I said, well, they do. And I'm sort of in the same place right now, and I can't really take your photograph. They'll feel like plastic to me. So he said, what shall we do about that? So I said, why don't we just kind of talk to each other? And he said, okay, great. He said, where are you from? I said, well, I'm actually Dutch. And he goes, oh, I love Holland. He goes, I go to Amsterdam quite a few times, and I love going to the concert hall, blah, blah, blah. So long story short, we started just relating to each other. And then I started photographing him after we were, actually connecting. And then this photograph came through, which is actually, I actually like. And later he called me up after the magazine came out, and he said he wanted to buy it because he wanted to use it for a book he was writing on film editing. So that's where the picture is now. Ah, there is Jerry Brown. It's kind of a very serious picture, but I kind of liked it up on stage there. This was another assignment. It was on homeless people, and I was hanging out with this guy a lot, and took his picture, and that was the cover. This was a whole other thing. I did a bit of work in San Quentin. We were doing a program there called Restorative Justice. And an offspring of that program is now called Restorative Resources. And I do that program here in Santa Rosa, and it's to do with offenders, kids, basically. And it's a program where you make these circles with kids and you ask them, you invite the parents or whoever was affected by what they have done. Sometimes you get kids out of juvenile hall and you work with them. And to cut that story short, is basically you make them accountable, you invite them in the circle, they take accountability for what they have done. You make a program for them, how they can make everything right. And we actually have one person here, Elizabeth, who is one of the facilitators. And what happens out of that is it's really beautiful. Those kids, basically, when they finish the program, they take photographs of themselves, like taking care of their parents or doing social services and stuff. Then we go to the judge and we say, this kid's been really good doing this and this and this. And the judge very often, mostly takes it off their record, and they don't have to go to juvie hall, depending on what they did, of course. But I don't want to talk about that too long, but in this case, this is a totally different case. This was a man who actually killed somebody right in front of everybody because you already had a life sentence in San Quentin. So I got the assignment that he was going to go to court. And so the magazine asked me to photograph him in court, which is never done. It's not allowed. You always see in the New York Times, there's always drawings of people, but you're never allowed to shoot any photographs in there. So I was going to see how I could. This is the time I take a little sip of water. I had to figure out how I could get his photograph. So what I did was just walk into the courtroom with my camera. And the key was not to ask permission first, shoot first and then ask forgiveness later. I walked into the courtroom and sat right in front and in the middle of the court case. And the judge stops and he looks at me and he says, "Who are you?" So I stood up. I said, "I work for this magazine here in Marin County, and we would really love to have a photograph of the defendant and put it on the front. So, because this is a social issue, and it's very important that we put it on in the magazine." So the judge said, "I don't have any objections. I make an exception for this." And then he said, "But you need to ask the defendant." So I looked at him. I looked at this man, and I said, "Do you mind if I take your photograph?" And he said, "No, but do it right now." So I just took a number of photographs, and there's the cover. Any questions?
Wow.
Okay, then we just keep
Were
going.
you intimidated, Robert?
I'm always intimidated. I'm intimidated right now, but I just keep going. Shoot first and ask questions later. So here we go. This was an interesting one. They called me up and said, "We want you to do a story on a movie called The Bridge. It's about people committing suicide." Because very few people know that in San Francisco, on this bridge, people jump off this bridge about every like 6 or 7 days. every 6 or 7 days, somebody jumps off the bridge. Nobody knows this because it never makes the news. But they made a film about this, and they had a hidden camera, and you can actually see people jumping off. But what they asked me to do was convey the sense of that in a photograph. So I had no idea how to do this. And this brings me to a point that I learned from a teacher of mine who said, when you go out with the camera, don't take pictures, but receive pictures. And that's something that I want to share in this group because it's a really interesting thing that is worth focusing on. You don't take pictures, but you start focusing on receiving pictures. What it does is you go into a kind of like a more of a you step back and then you go forward and then you actually start to receive photographs. You have more of an interaction with your environment, especially in street photography, and you start to kind of invite the environment into you so that it's more of a receiving of the photographs. The photographs will come to you. Now, it may sound a little airy-fairy, but I'm finding that's actually true. You could also call it a state of mindfulness if you want to go kind of Zen. But so it's walking around inviting the photographs. So what I did here is I started walking across the bridge, and I had no idea what I was going to do. And then I saw this yellow phone, and I saw crisis counseling on the top. So I thought, oh, that's a good picture. But then I moved to the right, and I saw, oh, this is good. I want to establish that this is on the Golden Gate Bridge. So I put in one of the towers there on the right, and then you see this line of the cables. And then I wanted something to happen for the actual depth of the drop. So then there was this boat that was coming towards me, and it was going to go underneath the bridge, but then it changed direction and started coming towards me, or towards San Francisco. It's where I am right now. And as it was coming, the sun was low down, so it hit through the bridge onto the ship. So when I took that picture, I had my three elements together. Because whenever I take scenic shots as well, or landscapes, I always go by the rule of thirds. Now, most photographers here have probably heard of that. You put something in the foreground, you put something in the middle, and you put something at infinity. And what happens when somebody looks at the photograph, they get sucked into the photograph. And most of the time, they actually will buy the photograph. So that was another gift from that particular perspective. So then this came out, and then a month later, I got a call from the magazine saying, we entered the magazine into this what's it called? A contest. And the contest for the best photographic cover in California. So then they said, we put this in, we submitted it, and you're number 2 on the list right now. And it's between you and one other photographer, and they're going to know in a few hours. So then I got another phone call, and they said, yeah, you actually won the contest. So this became like this was my award. I actually won an award. So when I say I'm an award-winning photographer, this is my award. So that was fun. They had a little ceremony at the St. Francis Hotel. Then it was called the St. Francis. Now I think it's called the Westin. Okay, that was that. Okay, here back in photojournalism, I was at a rodeo in Oregon, and just walking around and going by my thing of just seeing what is going on. And I like this picture. Basically, I mainly like it because of the horse. And this one was interesting to me because you can really see how, as kids, we take on our parents in many, many ways. You know how you take on your parents' thoughts, and basically you download them. He's doing exactly that right now. He's just standing there. This was another example of that was the same location. I was just sitting down in front of them. I did not interact with them. I just started taking photographs, and they were fine with it. So this is a totally different thing. This is in Afghanistan. After I did my skateboard photography, I met a friend of mine who said, I just bought a 40-year-old post office truck, and I'm going to drive, this is back in England, and I'm going to drive from London to Delhi. Would you like to go? And I said, that's 2/3 around the world. That's a really long drive. He goes, yeah. So you have to realize if you say yes, there's no return ticket or anything. So I said yes. So And he also said, "Oh, I can't drive, so maybe you can drive." I said, "Okay." So we took this journey. It took I don't know, it took about 2 months to get to. Uh, we first went to Iran, because Iran. This is 1979, and we drove into Iran. We drove into Tehran, and there was a revolution going on. That was when the Shah was deposed, and the Ayatollah came into power. But when we drove into town, he wasn't in power yet. So there was just a whole bunch of students running around with machine guns. And we were right in the middle of it. And so we're going, what is going on? They said, we have deposed the Shah and everything is going to be fantastic. They didn't know what was going to happen to them yet. But so we hightailed out of town. We drove for about 3 days and we got into Afghanistan. And Afghanistan at that time in 79 had not been attacked by the Russians. That happened like a month later. Well, that's also while we were there. So we got kind of like a lot of events going on. What happened was basically Kandahar, that was the town we got to, was really, really beautiful. And Afghanistan was a wonderful place to spend time. And we hung out there a lot. And this was a boy. And what I like about this image is that he was very happy, even though his foot had been blown off or something, you know. And it was interesting for me to see that, you know, you may have all kinds of things happen to you, but you can still choose to be happy, which in this case was a really good example. Now we're in Morocco. I did a tour. This was the beginning of doing tracks through the desert, and I was on top of a camel. And I submitted this to the British Journal of Photography, and they picked it for their yearly book. This is my partner Pam, who's in the room next to me right now. And I put this in because a few months ago we were in Amsterdam, and we went to the Rembrandt house, and I want to recommend going to the Rembrandt house. It's really interesting. And we went up to the studio where Rembrandt actually painted most of his paintings, and that was his studio. So I asked her to stand there, and as you can see, as a photographer, the light's coming in through that window, and that was the light that he used. So there we are. Now we go into landscapes. And does anybody have any questions about anything right now before I go into landscapes? Okay, then let's continue. As Stephanie said, I did a lot of work for calendar companies, and I had a line of greeting cards. Point raise. What I did here is I lowered myself onto this little ledge from a rope so that I had these green plants, because it's actually very often photographed here. Point raise again. I like the wave just crashing and the birds. This is from Mount Tam, looking at Stinson Beach. This should be a good, this is on panoramic, so if you ever go out there and walk left onto the mountain, there's probably going to be a lot of flowers again this year. I use the law of thirds here, which is where you focus in 1/3 into the landscape. And what happens if you, so say I focus on this rock that you see there, and if you focus on that and you stop down to f11 or so, you get the whole picture sharp. But you have to use like a longer exposure, so you have to use a tripod. So I put the tripod in on the beach and waited for the wave to get me, and then I took this exposure. It's also a greeting card. And then because it's a long exposure, you get that feeling of the water flowing. This is from an airplane. It's not from a drone. It's from an airplane. I got a job in Southern California, and we flew over. We got there by plane. We flew over in his private turboprop. I think it's called a Mustang. And we were lucky enough that the bridge just came out. This is a slot canyon. Let's see. Where are we right now? Look at my little sheet. No, this is a. It's called a slot canyon. It's called Antelope Canyon. If you ever get a chance to go there, it's near Four Corners. They lower you in on a rope, and you sort of walk around there and get incredible lighting. Then this is not that long ago. This is a Death Valley. And it's called Mesquite Flats. If you ever get a chance to go to Death Valley. It's fantastic. It's an amazing place. There you have it as well. It's really fun in black and white. Um, we drove on a thing to a thing called the racetrack, and it's a dirt road, so you need four-wheel drive. And this is an amazing sight. You say, how are these rocks moving, right? So after reading up on it, they assume, because nobody ever sees them moved, that this flat turns in winter when there's a rainstorm, it gets water on it, and then when it freezes over, it turns into ice, and then you have these really very strong winds there that apparently blow these rocks around. So you see them, you see them, you see their tracks. Trippy place. We were there camping. This is our little camper on top of the little Subaru. You can comfortably sleep there. It has like a queen, not quite a queen, but it has like plenty of room in it, and that's how the stars really did look. Very trippy place. I did use a little fill-in flash here, so. There was, when we came out, there was this crow that was always sitting next to the car, just looking at me, so I decided to take this picture. And this is interesting. What I first thought about, what these guys do, these hawks, I thought they were like, fighting each other. And then I found out from somebody who knew about these birds that they're actually playing. This is actually like an endearment between them. So that's kind of that was an interesting, interesting explanation. Grand Canyon. There was a storm coming in on the left-hand side, kind of like that. Now we are in Moab, and there is a park there called Arches, and this is Arches. If you ever want to go to all these parks and be really, really close to them, go to Moab. It's really beautiful. It has Canyonlands. It has lots of different parks there. This is Canyonlands again. This is Sunset,
Wow.
and it just has amazing colors.
Crazy.
Wow.
This is called Mesa Arch. It's very well documented. People take this picture all the time. Not quite this one. It's more where you actually see the arch and sun is rising from the mountains. But I thought I actually liked taking it through the arch and looking at the landscape underneath. Another arch, and I don't remember where this was, but I thought this was a nice example of thinking that when you look at the rock on the left, that was the whole thing was a rock, and somehow all that had eroded through there. It's a very good example. It looks like it's going to fall apart any time. Sedona. This was done with the tripod, just for the photographers out there. Done with the tripod. I have one leg is up on the left-hand side and one on the right-hand side, or two on the right-hand side and one on the left-hand side, and the camera is obviously vertical. I did that same thing again of focusing into the middle, say of the middle of the rock, 1/3 in, and then do like a longer exposure so that when it's stopped down, the rocks in the background, they're called cathedral rocks, I think, they get sharp as well. And I learned this from a guy called Galen Rowell. I don't know if you know Galen Rowell, but he died in a plane crash. He was a very good photographer. You ever want to look him up? Galen Rowell. This was in Tuscany, a place called Montegerioni. Yeah. And it was interesting when I got here, I had to park down below because it's one of those villages you can't drive into. So I had to walk up, and as I walked up, I had left my camera gear inside the car, and I walked into the scene. I couldn't go back and get it, but then so I drove back home or back to the hotel, and people entered the waiting room. Okay. And came back the next day. And as I was walking over to this location, I usually have my tripod on my back and my camera in front of me. And sometimes people start to follow me because they think that I'm going to find a really good location. And then they follow me and they set up next to me. And what happened here was I got back to this place. I set up my tripod and two guys go right in front of me, set up their tripods right in front of me, right in front of that gate. So I went over to them and said, you know what, this is my shot. You're going to have to leave. So and they did. So I actually got the shot. Here is that you don't have to have a specific subject. It can be just, again, something in front, like this church on the left, and then flowing something in the foreground, something in the middle, and something in the back. And you see this little road sort of following that. Then architecture, we're now at the last chapter, and this is going to go quite quick now. Architecture, you work with the architect very closely. I do a lot of real estate photography too, and one of my mates, one of my actually employers, is here at this thing too. So John, here are some pictures. Yeah, again, it's a very controlled way of shooting. This is from a drone. I use drones, and this is on Stinson Beach, where houses sell for insane amount. This is in Berkeley, and this was an interesting shoot. This was the man who owned this house was an engineer, and he had actually developed, I don't know if you ever heard of the red button, or it used to be called the red button that the president has, which launches, the atomic warheads. The guy who invented that whole system, that was his house. And believe it or not, he had 40 acres in Berkeley, and it was all hidden. Like, you don't know that there is acreage back in the hills there. So that was obviously real estate because he was selling it. This is in Napa, another real estate picture. It wasn't easy to do. It's not easy to do these night shoots, and then all the photoshopping that is involved in it. This is from a drone. This is a property at Stinson Beach again. There's a lagoon behind Stinson, behind the beach. That was a lagoon. That's from a drone again. This was a house. This is interesting. This house had 3 tiny bedrooms, a very small house, and it sold for $13 million. And the reason it sells for that is because you get this. That's what you pay for. And the beach there, I don't know if you've ever been to Stinson. This is a gated community, by the way, but you can walk when you go to Stinson Beach. You can walk along the beach, and you can walk by all these houses. You just can't walk up to them. Almost at the end. Oh yeah, this is in San Anselmo. So these are some more real estate pictures. Mill Valley. Napa again is the inside-outside look that they like. And there's a kitchen. This is in Napa again. And a kitchen, and I think, oh yeah, this is in Belvedere. It's obviously a drone shot. And this is the last shot, which is like an inviting hot tub. So basically, I'm done talking. Does anybody have any questions?
I've got one or a few.
Okay, go ahead. I'm gonna stop share and get out of this.
And I assume your earlier picture film and your later ones are digital, but just
Yeah.
curious, it's like what kind of mix there is between digital and film, and what you feel are the differences between film and digi. I mean, I know how I feel and what I see, but I'm just curious what you feel about it
Well,
and
my
the
opinion
technology
completely
and
changed. Like in the beginning, I didn't like it. I heard that there were actual photographers who committed suicide because they lost all their work. It's true. With me, that wasn't the case. I just had to relearn, and I started with these, like 2 megapixel or whatever, megabyte cameras, and I didn't like it at first, and now I love it because you have complete control, and you have complete control, and if you do it right, it's beautiful. So it doesn't matter anymore. And I still like, even though I don't do it, I still like film. It's fine. Film is like you have to be much more skillful. You have to use lighting a lot. Like I'm using lighting right now here. But normally in digital, the way we photograph right now, even on interiors, we barely ever use lighting. You just photograph the interior and then you expose for the window because that would be overblown, right? You can see that on your iPhone. When you take an interior picture, the window's always blown out. So what you do when you take, say, real estate or architectural photography, John knows about that. John is here. you basically expose for the interior and you expose for the windows, and then you just through layers and through Photoshop, you put them both together, and it looks fantastic. So I used to go around when I first started doing architecture. You have to have like a van full of lights, and you have to set all these lights at different times too. You're like, light that corner only needs 10 seconds, and that corner needs 5 seconds, and you had to like rig this all up. So you had to have an assistant, and you had to have 4x5 cameras, or yeah, 4x5 cameras, and you had to develop this, and it was nerve-wracking, because you couldn't see anything. So you shot Polaroids. Polaroids were expensive. They were like $1.75 a Polaroid. So that kept mounting up a lot. Also, film was very expensive. One frame in a film camera costs like 75 cents when you get it printed. So that starts to mount up. And with digital, you don't have any expenses, like none. No lighting, no assistance, nothing. So does that answer your question?
Yes and no.
Well, I sense that you have a certain opinion about digital.
Oh, well, we all do it. I mean,
Yeah,
film and darkrooms and printing are totally different beasts than digital.
yeah.
And personally, show me an old silver halide print, and it's just the quality and the depth is entirely different than anything you can get in digital, even despite, layers and masks and all that. It's just there's a certain level of detail that I'm still lacking and missing in most digital.
I could, well, no, this is beside the point, but I could probably show you some prints, or actually done through Bay Photo. They do incredible prints, also of digital files, and I would love to discuss with you and take a look at those prints and see if you can tell the difference. Also, what I did a lot, most of the beginning shots that you saw was all on film. And a lot of the landscapes in the beginning, like Point Reyes and all of the Marin sessions were done on film as well. But then when you scan that, really, when you have a really good scanner, you scan that, and then you have Bay Photo, who are like excellent, print that, you get incredible results. But that's all I can say about it, because it's a discussion that you can have about, records as well, records and CDs. It goes on forever, and there are differences, and some are, you might prefer one over the other. Any other questions?
Yeah, you said you never ask permission of the people you take in street portraits,
Yeah,
and you get objections, and how do you handle that, or how do you feel about marching up?
it's basically scary. That's all there is to it. You walk around, and the way I did it was, sometimes with some of those pictures that you showed, like at a rodeo or something, where these people are sitting right in front of me. It's almost like I go into a certain, what do you call it, a vibe, a frequency that I'm not. I sit down in front of them. I don't talk to them. I just sit there and I just relax. And as I relax, I focus on the thing I said before. Can I just receive? Are these people open to being photographed? And 9 times out of, well, not 9 times out of 10, I say 7 times out of 10, it's fine. Sometimes it's not, and then I apologize, and but it's never happened that I had to give them the film, or I had to like erase the file. Um, Normally, it all goes really well, and I can start talking to them afterwards. But if you talk to a person before they start to pose, then that takes the whole thing away. So you have to kind of get the picture before they know you're there, and then if they are there, it's like a dance. You know, that's what street photography is.
Okay.
And if you're going to sell it or something, then you would theoretically have to go talk to them and get their permission, all that kind of stuff, which that seems to be a hassle. But so it's really up to you. It's kind of to me, it's just a wonderful thing to do. But it's always scary. That never goes away.
I have a question about portraiture,
Yeah.
and specifically about the cover you shot with uh, the film editor. I forget his name again.
Which one?
The film editor,
Oh yeah, Walter Murch. Right.
Murch. Yeah,
Yeah.
and you weren't satisfied, and then you decided just to have a conversation with him and relax and so on. Relax him, relax yourself, perhaps.
Yeah.
And is that how did that come to you? Is that something that you've encountered or since or before, or where you're
I actually encounter it all the time. There's a teacher I have who told me that in art, you have three dimensions. You have the first, second, and third dimension. He said in photography, the first dimension is a snapshot. It's just a snapshot. The second dimension is when you are relating to your subject, which I did with him. And you can call that you reach a place of like heart connection. So as you photograph, that Stephanie knows about this, as you relate to your subject, you are becoming their friend. And it's almost like you enter inside of them. I know it sounds funny, but you sort of go inside of them and you start to relax inside that place. And as you relax, you'll find that your subject starts to relax as well. So you engage them and you humor them and you talk with them. And then as you're doing that, you're doing two things at the same time. You're you're watching them like a hawk, see where their expressions are, and at the same time you are becoming their friend. You're talking with them and you're relating to them, and not everybody can do that. So that I call that is the second dimension. So then you get a portrait like the one with him, where you can feel there's an energy. And again, Stephanie knows this, that the camera picks up the energy or the love, you can call it that, between you and your subject. It's recorded. And what happens is when you print it, it is reflected out of the photograph and it touches the heart of the person who is looking at the photograph. It's the same in painting. If you look at the Rembrandt painting, certain paintings, you can see that the sense that you get as you look at the painting or you listen to the music touches your heart. So it's another dimension. That's the second dimension. Then the third dimension, which I haven't done, it's where you are so the camera picks up, or the music. It's better done in music. A better example is say Mozart or Beethoven or Mahler for that matter, where the music is so powerful that it changes you inside. There's something that happens on you and you get so emotional, but it was created by that composer. You know, he basically channeled that energy. Like Mozart would say, I just hear the music, I just write it down. But what gives it the power is a different dimension. And this is not a dimension that you can really explain, but you can feel it, right? Anybody can feel it. And it's the same in photography. You know, when you see a really good portrait, you're touched by it. And that touch is there because of the photographer, because of Stephanie. Well, you can, when you can do this for yourself too. When you take it with your iPhone, start taking photographs of somebody and play with this. Start thinking about, I'm not going to do the snapshot. I'm going to stay here for a while and see what we can create together. That's it.
Thank you.
Sure.
I like the concept you explained about receiving photographs instead of taking them.
Yeah.
That's a good thing to follow up on for me.
Yeah. That was a man called Barry Tellman. He taught me that.
Yeah, that's it.
So, and yeah, it's a great thing. It's also because it's a form of meditation, right? That's what all of this is.
Yeah.
You just go inside and you just relax and you just walk around and you're no longer hunting for that photograph, even though on one level you are, but you're not forcing it.
Yeah. Well, I feel very relaxed when I'm out photographing. So, I can get in the Zen mood real easily.
Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing with architecture or real estate photography. Like, don't underrate real estate photography. It's the same thing. You walk around, and they can be. This is really interesting because I photograph a lot of houses, and some of them are like total pits. Like somebody had lived there for like 50 years, and they're dead, and the dog stuff is still around, and it's like really decrepit. And it's fascinating to go into that house and then just start to love the people that live there, or start to love the house, even though you're. In the beginning, it wasn't so easy for me, but you start to engage with your subject, and then something translates inside of that photograph. So I'm using that example because it's kind of extreme, but with all photography, whether it's landscapes or people, or you can relate to your subject.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And sometimes we get lucky.
Absolutely. Yeah, we got lucky. I got lucky a lot, so it was nice. But you never know why the luck happened, right?
It's good to have the skills and the technology handy
Yes.
when the luck presents itself.
And then the luck presents itself. That's exactly right. So the luck is not really an accident. Sorry. I can't hear you. Your sound is not working.
Somebody sounds like a gerbil.
Yeah, you're listen, your sound is wait, stop. We cannot hear you. We cannot hear
I'm gonna
you.
mute everybody. I'm gonna mute everyone and unmute yourself. Unmute yourself after I mute you here.
What's happening? What's happening?
Oh, it's weird.
Anyway, so
okay, unmute yourself if you'd like to. But I don't think that person's Robert, feel free to unmute yourself. To unmute. Robert, unmute yourself.
You're muted, Robert.
okay, I was saying all these things, but I was just saying, does anybody have any other questions? Please feel free to do.
It reminds me of my friend who lived in Mill Valley, Pat Stroud, a wedding photographer who did really beautiful work like Rembrandt work, and she insisted that she met with the people and spent time with them before she photographed them. She said, "How can I photograph a wedding if I don't know who the people are?"
Right. That's another good example. Yeah. It's a really fun thing to do. It's, you know. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Very good work, Robert.
Oh, thank
Yeah,
you.
I enjoyed that tremendously. It was a
Oh,
good
that's great.
presentation.
Inspiration.
I have another question. I'm sorry.
John is doing little clapping hands.
I have a question about the moment.
Yes.
Is there, I mean, if I remember this correctly, Cartier-Bresson had his camera ready all the time, and there was a moment, and then he would capture that moment,
Right.
and you can't, you know, there's that's kind of like such an internal, intuitive process when that
Right.
moment comes to you.
Right.
Could you say something a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, it was certain that Cartier-Bresson never asked permission to photograph people, because he would never have gotten those photographs, because those photographs are like, he's one of my heroes. He just took the photographs. You know, he didn't ask. He didn't even ask, you know, sign a form to publish it. He didn't do any of that. That was a different time too, where you wouldn't get sued if you had a picture of the Khrushchev or something. Like, he went everywhere, and what he did was, yes, he set his camera up before. He even had his focus. He didn't do a lot of wide angle. I think it was mainly like regular 50 millimeter. But he set everything up beforehand. He had a Leica, so you have to kind of pre-focus them, because I don't know if you ever used a Leica, but I tried and I couldn't. Or at least I always grabbed my Nikon instead, because it was easier to focus. But to answer your question, when I was doing skateboard photography, it was a very similar thing. Skateboarders are really, really, first of all, they're completely unruly, and they're really, really fast. So, you know, when you took a skateboard picture, you would have to lie down at the lip of the pool, right? And they would come up and be literally about 2 inches away from your face. You know, they were that close, because you're shooting very wide angle, but you had to pre-focus. And also, you had to listen. You had to listen when they would come up and when they would be airborne, and then you would take the picture. That wasn't an easy thing to do, and it's again, which most sports photographers know. If you see the thing in the frame, you know, you're too late. So with skateboarding, you had to go by a sense. It was almost like a Zen moment, where you know they were in the air and they were in exactly the right spot. You could sense it, and then you shoot the picture at that particular point in time. And I was somehow very lucky with that, because it happened to me a lot. So I got to work for them a lot. I was very lucky in my career. I had really amazing jobs. It was lots of fun.
I'm sorry, and then just to follow quickly, is there a difference between something that's candid shot, and an intentional portrait?
The difference between the two?
Well, just in terms of capturing the essence of a person in an unguarded moment, and they reveal themselves to you in a candid. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, that was the same with Walter Murch. That was actually a good example. That at first I wasn't getting that shot. I wasn't in the place, and I saw that if I'm not in the place of relating to that person, it shows in the photograph. and everybody knows it, and the person you're photographing knows it. So you have to look at where you are. That's when you are actually taking a photograph of a person and they're posing for you, or so called. And Leibowitz is really good at it. She's a master. So so it's something that you learn, but it actually really has to do. Stephanie, you could talk about this. What do you think about this? Come on. How do you do it? This is a really good question. I don't want to answer it. I want you to answer it. You're really good. Unmute
Well,
yourself.
I'm not very articulate, but for me, it's like it's just a feeling when it's working out. I have lots of moments like what you were talking about not connecting or feeling like I'm getting something beyond a snapshot. And I've never had the guts to tell someone. So that's totally new to me, and I'm going to actually use it. But when I am connecting, and it's just a feeling. That's all I can say. That when you're
Yeah,
getting it,
that's a good way to put it. You can feel it, right? You feel it when you're connecting with that person. And if you're not, try to find ways to, through conversation, how you can connect together. And it's basically, I always use this word, but it's love. How can you get into a relationship with your subject where there is that caring, that sense of caring, the sense of fun, and then it just happens. And then you see that in their eyes. It's in the eyes.
I think for me, it's when there's a moment where the mask drops.
Right, exactly. But to get there is a whole other journey, right? And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work, and that's okay too. Um, I'm aware of time. Are there any other questions? I don't want to talk too much. No. But I'm open to more questions.
I don't have a question. I just want to say I really like your work.
Oh, thank you so much. That means a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you. Very inspiring.
I have a comment
that's so great to hear.
I think it's very rare that you hear someone talk about photography work and use the word love, that you are working from your heart. And so I just want to thank you for bringing that into the room, especially as a man. So thanks a lot.
Oh, thank you. That's great. Yeah, there's a whole social awareness inside of photography as well. I would love, because I work with juvenile offenders, I would love to go into juvie hall and do photography with them, but it's not allowed, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a different world these days in terms of permissions and people's
I know. You don't want,
sensitivities. And video's the worst. If you shoot a video of a group, we're all so self-conscious. It's like you can have the side of somebody's head in an hour-long video and they get mad at you because they think everybody in the world is looking at them and sees the zit on the side of their head.
I know all of that. Yeah.
There's always Photoshop. I love your.
Go ahead.
Robert, thank you so much for inviting me too. I really appreciated watching you share all your work. When you talk about connecting with people, I think about the youth that you connect with in our circles too, and seeing them and then letting them unmask too in front of you, and sharing more about who they are, without the camera in the room, it's really appreciated.
Oh, that's actually true. Yeah, we do these circles, like I said, in restorative justice, and I actually I can actually say this here, but I had the fortune of getting arrested one time because of marijuana, and for some reason they threw me in a maximum security jail, and so I learned so much about what that life is like. So now when I work with convicts or I work with youth who are in trouble, I know exactly how they feel. Like I always tell them, I say, I know exactly how you feel. And they go, how can you know that? I said, well, I've been where you have been. And I know that the thing that's most important for you right now is to love yourself and that you're innocent, and you may have done a terrible thing, but in the end, the fact that you're even here talking to us means that there is goodness inside of you. There was this Indian guru in India, and he would always, they would give him the cases of the boys inside his ashram or something that had been bad. And he said, so they asked him, what do you think of those boys that have been bad? And he said, there's only one answer. He goes, all the boys are beautiful. And I found that that's true, that actually everybody is beautiful. You just have to go and dig underneath and then see that everybody is beautiful. And once you know that and you approach somebody that way, you have a certain vibration, and I use the word love again, and they will respond to that. And then when you photograph them, then you get that shot. You got the shot. So maybe
Do y'all
that's a
want
good.
to hear our photo challenge that Robert and I agonized over for?
Yeah, this is a good ending point. Yeah, go ahead, Steph.
Here, let's see. Okay. So, do you want to read it, Robert?
Oh, sure. The Fairfax Photo Club. This is the February photo challenge.
Oops,
And
March. February. You're right. Right.
yeah. Oh, this is the photo challenge, yes. And I said, I still feel nervous when I shoot on the streets. Feel your fear, slow down, be mindful, and shoot anyway. This month's your challenge is to be a photojournalist. Show us your best shots. So basically, go out and, take some pictures.
All right.
I'll post that on the
If you
Facebook
choose to
page.
play.
Right up my alley.
And has everybody written their city and state in the chat, please? I'm sorry to keep asking, but it's going to be requested of me. So
About what?
I just need everyone's city and state.
I've never done a chat. It's Sebastopol.
It's Sebastopol. I'll remember that, Jennifer.
Thank you.
So I want to thank everybody because I'm done. So thanks so much. I really enjoyed this. I want to do it again sometime.
It was funny. I was trying to think
Robert.
of who to invite to do this, to speak, and I've run through so many people over the last couple of years, and I was like, wait a minute. I hadn't even thought of asking you, Robert. We hadn't spoken in such a long time, and I wrote to you, and I don't think I heard from you for a while, and then so grateful when you responded.
Thank you.
And I knew it was going to be a great talk.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Are we done, or are you going to do more stuff?
I think we're golden.
Oh, we're golden. Okay.
And I really appreciate that you're right on time and everything. It's great.
All right, great. Thanks, everybody.
It was wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Night. Thanks, Steph.
Bye. Thank you.